Hazbin Hotel is the most discussed animation to come out this year, having a great mix of positive and negative views on it, with one of the main complaints being that the themes are boring and don't make the most out of the source material. I do definitely agree with this criticism and acknowledge its validity, but I don't think it's nearly as bad as some make it out to be. Sure, the trope of angels actually being the bad guys all along is worn down to the point where mindless trash like High School DxD regurgitates it, and it's definitely disappointing to see the mischaracterization of historical figures.
I'm not built like other men.
However, there are genuinely good parts to the show. The animation is pretty good, and though melodramatic, some of the voice actors did very well, and the characters are, well, we'll get into them. It definitely doesn't hurt that the character designs are prime pencil-neck code gay-ass goon material. Not to mention, the show technically affirms that a world without God is unjust, so I think media literacy is the real redeemer in this situation. I'll get into the voice acting later, but I think I should begin a critique properly with talking about world building. I started the video sarcastically, but I do mean the things I say. I don't think that the fact the world building misses on opportunities to explore the themes and world of its source material makes the world building bad. I think that it's just bad outright. The best example of what I would consider weird or inconsistent is the musical numbers. It makes sense why people like Charlie, Alistair, and Angel Dust would sing, but Adam and Baggy? This could be excused as world building, since it said in the intro that Lilith inspired demons with their songs, and the most powerful demons control things like radio and television. So, being talented in music would be a good indicator of someone's power level, and how well they're respected. But a decent chunk of the musical numbers in the series end in bystanders acting hostile to strangers.
Wow! That was shit!
Like the Loser song, the Hotel song from the pilot, and the Sorry song that Serpentious has. And the ones that don't get negative reception are typically done in private where nobody else can butt in. The detail in the intro describing Lilith inspiring the masses with song rings hollow when the only time singing in public is met with a warm reception is when the cannibals are introduced. This could have been explained in the intro, alongside the different preferences that the various sides of the pentagram have, but instead, the cannibals act more like a MacGuffin for Charlie than a part of the world that's always been present. If Vivzie wanted to lean into the direction that Charlie is a lot more inexperienced, it would have been more impactful if the singer for Charlie was a lot more sloppy in the beginning, before getting better and better as time goes on. But instead, it just kinda makes Charlie look stupid for not trying to advertise to the place in hell that she would appeal to the most. The Overlords are by far the worst part about the world building. I wouldn't call them bad as characters, it's more that they're introduced but never really shown. Like there aren't any TVs or video cameras past episode 2 when Box gets canned, and Velvet doesn't do anything with social media or clothing despite calling herself the backbone of the V's. Carmilla has some of the most setup out of all the Overlords, with her weapons being used frequently by Serpentious throughout the show. But it's still not as much as I would like. Like, you can tell how much of an influence Bezos has on our economy because of how many Amazon logos you see all over the damn place. You can go dumpster diving right before trash day in any city, and I can guarantee you that a dumpster will be filled with over 24 Amazon boxes with that little smiley face on it. In contrast, Carmilla doesn't really have a recognizable logo that's plastered all over everybody's guns. I can't really tell you what the modern English guy specializes in other than his speaking mannerisms, and he kinda looks like a spider. Valentino's the only Overlord that actually feels like he's in control of anything, because of how important he is to Angel's story. Maybe in a later season there are going to be sinners who are chained down by different Overlords, but for now they just feel like such background characters. It's the most egregious because you don't necessarily even have to show the characters being on screen. All you have to do is give them a few logos that are plastered all over the place. But as they are, they feel a lot less like mob bosses and more like Power Ranger villains of the week. The release order is significantly more the fault of Amazon than it is Vivzie, but it still remains a problem. 5 whole months pass in-universe between the first episode and the 6th, which aired only a week later. The reason I know this is because the big purge that was shown at the end of the pilot was moved from being 365 days away to being only 176. Because the time change is done within the span of an episode, we don't really get to see how people react and change specifically due to the threat of mass execution. Daggy is the only character who seems affected by it, but even then, there isn't any contrast between her methods of attempting to redeem sinners before and after the revelation. It's also repetitious considering the pilot already set the deadline for a year, but that would presume that the execution isn't negligible to begin with. The fact that Charlie has Alistair and Lucifer at her disposal to protect the sinners in the hotel during the purge, and that Angel Dust and Serpentious have lived for literal decades in hell, would have to be ignored in order for either of the deadlines to be worth a damn narratively. But Angel Dust treats the execution like his death date when explaining why he doesn't want to improve.
Oh, please. You had less than half a chance when you started all this salvation bullshit. And now... ain't no silver lining this time, Toots.
The date is also used to indicate that angels are afraid of hell potentially rebelling since an angel was killed, but it's brought up in only a few scenes throughout 6 episodes, and most of them really don't explore the implications of angels being killable. Like, the first musical segment brings up the idea that it's this big, weighty thing that could change the course of hell forever, but then the next one, when it has the opportunity to discuss the ramifications of it, decides to make a romantic musical number. This is bad as is. But the characters being sung about in terms of how much this singer wants to protect them have hardly any screen presence throughout the entire season. You heard that right. The person that somebody killed a fucking angel for has such little characterization that I doubt you can find somebody who can tell you their name off memory. This is a problem because the show wants to draw parallels between Vaggie and Carmine, culminating in a moment where Vaggie has to plea Carmine to give information to her, without being able to use any logical justification for it. Thus, if we're given more information about her loved one, we can draw even more parallels between her and Vaggie. I like the contrast of Vaggie having to display her passion versus Charlie having to become a military leader, while still using their basic skill sets to accomplish their goals. But the setup for both of those moments happened to be inadequate. I can likely go on for a few hours talking about how the world building's bad, and I can nitpick at a few lines and songs and whatnot, but I feel like my examples should suffice.
10 years old.
The songs would be completely fine if they didn't mess up with the pacing of an episode or undercut good moments. The aforementioned "holy shit, angels can die" is undercut by showing the relationship between 2 side characters who never interact in a scene past it, and it doesn't have to do with the dead angel to begin with. The scene is trying to set up that Vaggie and Carmine both like protecting their loved ones to pay off in a later episode, but instead of showing the relationship that Carmine has with her loved ones and why she would love them so much, the show just tells you their relationship and expects you to eat it up. The song and dance number with Sergeant Foley would have been completely fine if they didn't break into it immediately after he revealed he was a mob boss. It also doesn't help that bystanders butt in to say how wacky and zany musical numbers are. But if I had to pick only one song that was the most squandered in all of this series, I would pick the first song in episode 1. The premise involves Charlie describing hell the same way a Disney princess would describe her kingdom, contrasted with her citizens who absolutely hate the damn place. It would be funny if someone were to pretend like everything is perfect when it's a trash fire, sorta like School Live. But instead of using the advantage of being animated, the citizens have to spell out that hell is a trash fire, and later on Charlie is cussing because she has stuff in her eye.
I'm not doing well. Another shitty day in hell.
Something you would think she would see as a normal occurrence, not worth giving a damn considering she's over 200 years old. I understand that it is inspired by theater, and theater contains a lot of plays where characters talk about their emotions rather explicitly.
And once more to the dungeons of my black despair.
But that's on a stage where the audience would have a hard time seeing every detail, so everything, especially acting, needs to be over-exaggerated to the point where anybody in the top row seats can tell what's going on. Contrast that with recorded media, where you can zoom in to show all the subtle details that are going on. On top of the fact that the audience is likely going to be closer to the screen, because it's more than likely going to be streamed on either a living room TV or a phone. If I wanted to, I could go on and on about how the songs are all set up and no payoff, like how More Than Anything didn't actually build upon a conflict that Lucifer was apprehensive about his daughter's project in spite of his excitement for it. Or how Stayed Gone might as well not have happened since Alistair never broadcasts from his radio tower ever again. If it feels like I'm cramming a lot of crap into this video without being connected, it's because I'm a fan of Hazbin Hotel, and if Vivzie has taught me anything, it's to bring up ideas and goalposts that sound cool and interesting and then not spend any time exploring them. Anyways, I've been ragging on it a bit too much, let's talk about the characters, some of the show that I actually like. Haram Spider is by far the best character.
I can eat pork.
His character being a sinner who desperately wants redemption, but thinks he's unworthy of it, is done really well. There's enough scenes of him being an ass to remind the audience why he's in hell, and a good amount of deeds that show why Charlie believes that he can be redeemed. Like most people who hate being addicted to sex and drugs, he values his friends vastly more than he values himself. My main complaint is with his voice. In the pilot, he was a lot more snappy and witty, whereas he's edging in the full release.
Everyone wants some of me, and I got the creepy fan letters to prove it.
I got the arms, I got the stamina, I got the legs, I got the lung capacity. Oh, I got the legs.
Though I do like Alistair and the scenes that he's in, he doesn't really do a lot of new things that we don't already see from him. He just tears people up half the time, and when he finally does something interesting like building another radio tower and telling people to tune in, he doesn't broadcast anything, and we just learn that it's sort of set up for a later season as opposed to something that's going to be done this season. Like, we don't see him messing with the V's despite his promise to, and we don't even see the effects of him short-circuiting all of the TVs in hell. He's mainly set up and hardly any payoff, which is a shame because I think his musical number is the best in the show and actually fit into the part of the episode that it was in. Some of the funnier bits of the show also happen with him in it because he provokes somebody. Serpentius is another great part of the show. He reminds me a whole lot of the Mighty Monarch from Venture Brothers in the sense that he's a jackass who wants others' approval and is super soft on the inside.
Only cool thing here is to say no to drugs. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm off to not have sexual intercourse before marriage!
He's also a decent chunk of the comedy in the show, which I'm fine with. The Monarch is a fucking great character. I've talked enough about my issues with Charlie. I think she's a completely fine premise for a character, but the execution is not there, at least most of the time. And now on to the outright bad characters. Adam, the edgy dark hamburger helper, and Lute. They have no character traits aside from being wrong about everything and being bad in every situation. I can only speak for myself, but I was hoping that they would end up in a more lawful evil category, having their own fucked up moral compass that they uphold to a T, the same way that angels in SMT are portrayed as.
Angels don't make mistakes.
You really think that?
I know that.
Yeah, I've never made a mistake in my fucking life.
But instead we just get Edgeworth, Jesse, and James without tits or pussy. One of the big reasons why I say Angel Dust is the best character is because he has a different relationship with other characters. He's respectful towards Charlie, open to Husk, and disrespectful to Vaggie. However, not every character has as diversified relationships as him. Vaggie and Husk especially feel more like add-ons to characters than actual characters themselves. I feel like the show would have benefited way more from being episodic, so it can explore these relationships and show how people from different backgrounds can help you get out of your troubles. Because as we all know, friendship is magic. I already alluded to this earlier, but the dialogue is very hit or miss. Sometimes it'll be pretty good, some of the jokes will actually land, but other times it's going to be just really explicit and it's going to say everything that the character is thinking. Similarly, the humor is rather hit or miss. There's obviously the joke that VivziePop uses way too many explicitives and innuendos, and though that is true, some of the jokes that land are pretty good. For example, Lucifer has to talk to his lesbian daughter that hadn't reached out to him in years, so when he picks up the phone, he has to blend in as a fellow homosexual.
This has to be perfect.
Hey, bitch!
That isn't to say that all of the jokes are explicit. In fact, the jokes that I found the funniest didn't involve any explicitives or innuendos. If you can't handle plot holes, the show is absolutely not for you. It has so many discrepancies in terms of character motivation as well as how things physically work in the world. It probably has the most plot holes out of any piece of media I have reviewed on my channel so far, to the point where I don't even want to go over a fraction of them without any monetary incentive. And in all honesty, this is the biggest roadblock in me recommending the show to anybody. It has enough interesting stuff to kickstart your brain, but it also punishes you for thinking too much. Anyways, my specialization has run out, so unless you know somebody who will specifically like the art style of the show, is into theater plays that has a lot of plot holes and all that, I would not recommend it. Now on to something I don't know anything about, the art style. I kinda like the art style. It reminds me of Code Geass with all the pencil necks and stick bug anatomy and all that. VivziePop has a unique style that you will never find anywhere else. However, it kinda screws over the animators who are only used to Bob's Burgers and Family Guy, having to draw all this detail on characters who are designed to be as thin as African cobalt miners. I'm not in the industry, so I won't exactly pass judgment on Vivzie or even Amazon at this point, but on top of the whole entire thing of screwing over indie voice actors, this is just another reason to pirate the show instead of watching it using your Amazon Prime account. I'm sorry that this video hasn't been nearly as anal as my other ones, but I still hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. Thank you!